Good day, YouTube. This is OPB here. Coming at you with a quick video. You might notice that the sorry, hat's kind of all over the place. You might notice that the background for this video is a little bit different. In the wife's car today, I had to put the baby seat in there. It's too damn cold to do it outside, and the garage was full, so I took it to work, did it inside the shop. Yeah. Anyways, without further ado, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment down below if you have any questions. It's gonna be a quick video. This is just me historical bushcraft items and things I use, part 2. So first things first, when bushcrafting, as I mentioned, I try to focus, that's more so for fun, and this kind of helps you reconnect with things around you, right? So I have 2 real time frames that I try to educate myself on, because they're the easiest to recreate with very little technology, right? And that's honestly probably going to be the hardest thing should the grid completely go down for a very long time, is finding out ways to do things that you wouldn't otherwise know how to do. Some of those things include flintlocks, things of that nature. Archery. Archery is a decent kind of skill. What is this person doing? Alright, well, we have our first idiot of the day. Anyways, thought I'd get through a day without one. So we got archery, flintlock firearms, things of that nature, right? Again, the 2 time frames I try to focus on are 17th century kind of skills, such as I kind of try to take things from my heritage, which is Highlander time frame. Fandabby Dozy, if you don't know that channel and you're into that time frame, is a great place to go. He focuses a lot on that, and I've been doing it about the same time as him, although I honestly haven't thought about making a YouTube channel, and I don't really want to rip him off, or a YouTube video based on that. I don't really want to take that from him, because he's honestly, he's pretty much the only one on YouTube doing it, which I think is pretty cool. Yeah, he focuses essentially on what is the time frame of the Jacobite Rebellion. He talks a little bit about Highland traditions, the warrior culture in the Highlands, survival culture, cattle raiding, things like that. All that my ancestors did. There's been stories passed down of my ancestors going on cattle raids and stuff like that for as long as I can remember. It's a family tradition, right? Now, I'm not saying some of you guys are on here for prepping. Some of you guys are on here for bushcraft talk. I understand that. So, hypothetically, when SHTF happens, I'm not recommending you go on the cattle raids, but, you know, if you gotta raid some cattle, having a couple of Highlanders with you is probably the best bunch of folks you can have, right? Anyways, because nothing says what is wrong with this guy like a family mole wearing Highlander or a kilt wearing Highlander. Screaming at you with his broadsword and a hairy chest, or even worse, you could go full Braveheart, even though that's not historically accurate. Braveheart was a knight, so he wouldn't have been wearing a kilt. Anyways, you could just moon them, right? But anyways, back to the kit. I'm gonna do it's not fully historically accurate, obviously. There's nothing in there is an original. The closest thing I do have is probably the round ball mold for my brown vest, because 75 caliber puts a hole in anything. That's why. And I do have a cold steel broadsword, and obviously no Highlander leaves the house without his dirk, right? I have that in my truck at all times. Ski and do and ski and necklace, those are two. Basically, one's a medium-sized knife, one's like a smaller knife you use for like cutting your food and stuff like that. One of them, the ski and do, was traditionally worn in a jacket coat pocket, like a coat pocket. Ski and necklace was basically translates to armpit knife. And the dirk in Gaelic is Bt.1, which has its origins in what's known as the bullock dagger, which is basically giving the fascination with the male appendages of the time. You can imagine why it was called that, the bullock dagger. And if you look at a dirk, you can understand where it got its design from. Anyways, just a little bit of historical information there for you. And the reason why I use a brown vest is it's a flintlock, so it serves two purposes. Number one, here in Canada, you don't need a firearms license for it because it's a flintlock, which I find is really weird. You don't need a license for a flintlock, but you need a license for a black powder percussion cap, even if it's the same thing. For example, Traditions has a flintlock Hawken that's a 50 caliber Hawken rifle. That's flintlock, and they also have the same one that's percussion, but you need a firearms license for the percussion cap version, but not the flintlock version. Anyways, go figure, right? Anyways, it's pretty messed up. But then again, we all know the Canadian government right now, but I'm not going to get into that. So what I tend to do is I tend to look at my kit. I like the 17th century, so I'm a student of history, right? I like learning history, and I like learning what historical evidence can give to me so I can better my skills. For example, using 17th century equipment, flintlocks, swords, dirks, ski and necklace, ski and doos, fire methods. I do have a kilt, but it's more of a dress kilt. I'm in the works of getting a great kilt made for YouTube. That's the only reason why I'm getting it made. I'm kind of hesitant, as I said, about doing that. I don't want to take away from Fandabby Dozy, but it's kind of like a Canadian perspective. Again, not quite 17th century. Yes, there were Highlanders here in Canada. Obviously, my ancestors came here, but we came here on my mom's side in 1640. They landed in Newfoundland, and on my dad's side, they landed in 1811 on leave from fighting Napoleon in France because you Americans decided to get a little bit frisky the next year. So we just kicked your butt back across the border, and we've been kicking your butt every single year since in hockey, right? So just a constant reminder. Yeah, so that's a little bit of backstory. It's not too personal, I guess. Yeah, so it's been Highlanders in Canada for a very long time. Also, there's a lot of Scandinavian culture along the East Coast. There is a little bit of that in me as well. Not much, but it's there. So it's kind of cool, the whole Viking thing. Viking and a Highlander, that's pretty sick, right? Talk about a warrior. And they were actually Vikings. They weren't just Norsemen. That's how they got there and came back in 1640. They didn't settle. They were here about 700, right? They came back in 1640. My ancestors, anyways, from all over, landed back there. So there is a little bit of Scandinavian, there is a little bit of, well, a lot of Celtic history. And believe it or not, one kind of meets with the other, right? So when I take that into a bushcrafting perspective, I use 17th century equipment, right? And I do try to focus more on like the Viking stuff too a little bit. It's pretty similar, but there is differences in gear. I don't have a Viking sword. That would be pretty cool. Maybe one day. I can't justify spending money on that, obviously. I was gifted the broadsword by my dad, which was probably the best gift I ever got. In all honesty, it was pretty cool. He's like, "Here you go, son. Here's a sword." Right? Every 14-year-old's dream is to have a sword. My dad's like, "Here you go. Oh yeah, by the way, it's sharp. Don't cut your hand off." Dirk I got when I was about 9. It's family tradition. At that age in Celtic history, Celtic tradition, you start, it's kind of like, obviously it's basically puberty, right? You're becoming a man, and a man carries his dirk. It's just something we've done. It's kind of one of those traditions. In modern day kind of thing, it's pointless. It's essentially a short sword. It's like a 12-inch blade length, so it's not really practical for anything but self-defense or offense, CQB kind of thing. But then again, it's a knife. So, and the Celtic broadsword, basket-hilted broadsword, not to be confused with a backsword. They are two different things. The sword that William Wallace used in the movie Braveheart is not a Celtic broadsword. Okay, it's what would technically be considered a great sword, because of its size, right? It's even bigger than a long sword. Okay, a long sword or hand and a half sword or two-handed long sword, which is really used with hand and a half, right? But, or one hand, is two very different things, or many different things. Now, you might be asking yourself, how good is a sword in bushcraft? I'll tell you one thing, when I was using that kit and I had the sword on me and I came over that hill and there was a wolf on the other side of that hill and he looked at me growling while he was devouring a carcass and there was no other wolves around, I'm glad I had that sword. No, I didn't kill the wolf, but it made me feel a little bit better, like, okay, I can probably take this thing if I have to. Now, lucky for me, the thing ran away and I didn't have to, but I was checking the color of my underwear after that one. Okay. that's essentially the only reason to have it while you're in the woods. Okay. Again, unless you're going cattle raiding in the Highlands or fighting off the English horde, it's not really gonna happen. Okay. You don't really need it, but it's one of those cool things to have, right? You kind of see how the gear would have worn on you, stuff like that. Now, granted, I'm not wearing a kilt while I'm out in the bush, but you can kind of get the same idea. But again, not all Highlanders wore kilts. Some of them wore woolen trousers, right? And I do wear those for two reasons. One, they're warm, and two, they don't make any noise. They're very quiet, especially when going up against brush. Very, very quiet. Good piece of kit. The ones I use are actually Finnish. I have the same tunic, a Finnish tunic, that I wear, so it's kind of like a Finnish uniform, but it's not. Well, it is, but it's not. And then obviously, like, you got your merino wools and all that, right? Wool's just a good material, period. Yes, it's heavy, but if you need it, you'll be thankful you have it. In terms of fire kits and all that equipment, there is a lot you can use. I like, personally, flint and steel. Now, if you think you're just going out with a flint and steel, you're not very intelligent, in my opinion. Always carry a lighter with you, because if Daniel Boone would have carried it, he would have. Especially a Bic. Zippos are okay, but they leak fuel. So if you are carrying a Zippo, just cover your arse and put a Bic in there, just to be safe, right? Or at least extra fuel. But a Bic is probably better because it's lighter. Or both, even better. Zippo fuel will get anything going with a little spark, right? You know, and then food-wise, if you look back on my channel, in my 500-kilometer bug-out bag video, you'll see a sleeve that I got from Self-Reliance Outfitters, Dave Canterbury's store. I think it's called the Woodsman's Pantry, I believe. It's just round tins. The Highlanders wouldn't have carried any like metal containers. Their main source of food and all that in the Highlands while out would have been oatmeal or oats or grits or what have you. Now, would I recommend carrying just oats? No, I would not. I would not recommend carrying just oats. Do I carry just oats? No, I do not. Do I carry oats in the traditional fashion? Yes, I do. And that would be in a small bag, not a plastic bag, although you can line your bag with a plastic bag. Don't take the chance of ruining your only food if that's all you're going out with, you know what I mean? For historical relevance, who cares? I want to eat. Okay, you can do the same thing with having a Ziploc bag inside of that drawstring linen pouch that's holding your oatmeal, right? You can do the same thing. Now, they could have, well, they would have foraged off the land. The 17th century Highlander was very skilled at reading the landscape, and they would have had to have known edible plants, because food in the Highlands was just not that accessible, right? Completely irrelevant, but the forest there is not the way it used to be. It used to be very forested. The Highlands was pretty much all forest. If you look at places in Ontario, especially where the Scottish kind of settled in, not Alexandria, was it Alexandria? Maybe. Anyways, I can picture it's out that way. They hold the world's largest Highland Games there every year outside of Edinburgh. It's basically where the Scottish settlers hung the crown of Scotland. I believe it was Alexandria. Anyways, look into it if you're interested. Highland Games, it's near Ottawa, Ontario. If you have a chance and you want to take a little vacation, I highly recommend going there. Amazing. Just be prepared to be outdrank. That's all I'm saying. People come from all over to participate in those games. Very skilled athletes, and just a great time in general there, if that's what you're into. Anyways, off the sidetrack, there's other